Welcome everybody to QB Power Hour. Today is March 17th, 2016. Happy St. Patrick's Day. The episode for today will be about QuickBooks Advanced Reporting, often called QBAR, in QuickBooks Enterprise. So this is all about QuickBooks Enterprise, only for QuickBooks Enterprise users, and we're going to explore the new module called Advanced Reporting. The agenda for today, we'll talk about QB Power Hour, we'll talk about the CPE process, upcoming live events, and the topics and learning objectives. We're going to learn about some of the limitations of custom reports in QuickBooks Pro, Premier, Accountant, and Enterprise, and the reason why we even use advanced reporting. We'll talk about the whole concept of pivot tables and how data is pivoted in Excel in order to create custom reports. We can do that with QuickBooks data. And then we're going to go deep dive into a QuickBooks Enterprise Advanced Reporting to understand exactly how this tool creates reports. About QB Power Hour, we are a webinar series, usually every 2 weeks, Thursdays, 12 p.m. Eastern. The next episodes are going to be next week, actually. On 3/24, Michelle Leung will do a presentation about streamlining your workflow. Then the week after, we're going to have guest speakers Joe Woodard and Mark Wickersham, some practice management tips on building an epic practice and really honing down on your pricing. Then we'll take a break for the rest of the tax season and resume again on Thursday, April 21st. We typically cover 50% QuickBooks Desktop, 50% QuickBooks Online. However, on this particular episode, this is going to be obviously 100% QuickBooks Desktop because this only works in QuickBooks Enterprise. Now, Michelle Leung is the co-host of this webinar. However, she's not going to be with us on this episode. She will, however, be on next week's episode on streamlining your workflow. My name is Hector Garcia. I live and work in Miami, Florida. I'm a CPA. I teach QuickBooks. Love training other accounting professionals and business owners on QuickBooks, Excel, and accounting related topics. So this is why I do these webinars. In order for you to get your CPE, you must watch the live webinar. If you're watching a recorded webinar, you must go to qbpowerhour.com to register for the live webinars. You must be logged in for at least 50 minutes, and we're going to give a CPE keyword in the middle of the webinar. You have to answer it at the end of the webinar, and you will get your CPE certificate usually within 3 weeks. Some upcoming events worth mentioning: the Ultimate Accounting VCon. It's a virtual online conference that Michelle and her friend Sandy do, all about accounting, QuickBooks, and cloud technologies. Check it out, accountingvcon.com. Very inexpensive, tons of content. The other event you may want to look at is Scaling New Heights in Alanis, Bahamas. This is going to be May 22nd to 25th. Check it out, woodardevents.com. We may have an advanced class on QuickBooks reporting, advanced reporting over there. Still up in the air if it's going to happen. Check out woodardevents.com to check out the calendar to see if it's going to go, but that may be a class that I'll teach live over there. QuickBooks Connect in San Jose, biggest Intuit created conference, and that's going to be October 23rd to the 26th, and that's quickbooksconnect.com. All right, so before we jump into QuickBooks Advanced Reporting, let's talk about some of the core features in QuickBooks when it comes to reporting. So first of all, QuickBooks has 110 built-in reports. By built-in reports, I'm specifically talking about these reports that are here, right? When we click on the reports menu, and we go into each of these categories, this is what I meant by built-in reports, okay? And out of those built-in reports, we can actually customize them through filters and columns, and I'll do an example of that to show you what I mean. Now, when we're going to build a custom report from scratch, not necessarily pull a standard report and customize it, we're going to be working with three main custom reports. One is going to be the custom summary, the other one is the custom transaction detail, and the third one is a list report. And I'll show you an example of each one. And what I like about the QuickBooks built-in reporting scheme is that the interface it's common across multiple screens. For example, if I do an advanced find, I will use the same filtering system as I do with custom reporting. So let me kind of show you what I mean by all that. So number one, we can start with a custom report by going into reports, company financial, clicking on profit and loss, and this is a custom report. But this is where we can start going deeper and deeper by doing things like going into customized report and then going into filters. Now, filter is where I tell it what information to show me and what information not to show me. So for example, I can go down to one of the classes and say, only show me a profit and loss for this particular class. And that's how filters work. It would discriminate every other piece of data and rebuild the report only with the transactions that have that condition. Now, in this particular report, this is a summary report. The concept of columns has to do with how the data is summarized into different columns. So in this case, the rows are accounts because this is a profit and loss, and the rows by default are accounts. And then the columns are, let's say, for example, customer job, and then we can create a report with multiple dimensions. Now, in the QuickBooks Advanced Reporting world, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, this concept of rows and columns, um, the expression that they use for that is called dimensions. So whenever you see the term dimensions in a QuickBooks Advanced report, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, this is exactly what they're talking about. They're talking about rows and columns, mostly rows, but they can also be used as columns. Now, I was referring to the advanced find. This is a edit menu and find, and then we click on advanced. And what I was referring to is this particular set of filters. This is the filters that we use to find specific transactions. It's actually the same exact set of filters that we use whenever we go to customize report filters and we filter data within a specific report. So this is something that's extremely awesome about how QuickBooks Desktop reports work, is that the filtering system is common across multiple interfaces. Now, when we talk about building reports from scratch, we go to the reports menu, we go to custom reports, and we're going to do either a summary or a detail. So I'll start with a summary, and the concept that I kind of want to nail down in the world of a summary report is the concept of columns and rows. So in the summary report, a row and a column, they serve as, the y and the x axis for a table. So for example, if the columns I were to use customer, and then on the rows I were to use, let's say, account list, and then I hit OK, basically I'm going to see accounts on the left side here. This is my rows, and then I'm going to see customers on the columns. So this concept of rows and columns in the summary report, they're basically designed for you to create a y and an x axis in a square table. Which is a little bit different than the concept of columns in a detailed report. So I'm going to go to reports, and then I'm going to go to custom reports and click on transaction detail. Now, transaction detail report is not about a square table with y and x axis. This is more about data points and lines. So in a detail report, it's more about line by line. And then the concept of columns, which are the columns that are up here. I'm going to click on customize report. Columns in a detailed report is talking about the fields. It's talking about the specific data points that you want to see. Now, that's different than filters. Now, I can have, for example, let me go down here, and I'm going to turn on one of these columns here. I'm going to turn in, let's say, state. So I'm going to turn on this column, hit OK, and then there's a state column there. So that basically, it means that it's going to show me that data point. But then when I go to filters, that means that in the case of this specific one, I'm going to search for state here. Let's say I only want to see sales for California. So basically what this is going to do is going to narrow down the amount of information that's there. Now let me use a different state. I'll use Michigan here, and then I'll hit OK. And then this will show me only Michigan sales. So this is really as deep as we can go with QuickBooks Custom Reports. And we can go one layer of subgrouping, which is here the totaling by. So if I were to total these, in this case, by, let's say, by customer, I can actually group my customer. I can group these. These happen all to be the same customers. So let me hit all here. So if I group them by customer, then I'm gonna see subtotals on these reports based on the specific customer. Now, the limitation is I can only have one layer of grouping here of total by, and this is where we get into custom reports. We're going to be able to see a lot more depth when it comes to being able to have a lot more pivoting points in there. So let me go back into the presentation here and we'll cover the next topics. So the built-in reports that we were talking about are things like the profit loss balance sheet, inventory valuation. As I mentioned before, we start with a pre-built report and then we can customize it in QuickBooks. The summary report, which is the same example. The first example that I did, we talked about rows and columns being a table or a grid, and then we talked about, or we didn't talk about, but whenever I double click on any piece of information in a summary report, it'll take me to a detail report, which is actually kind of cool and great about QuickBooks. Now, what are some of the limitations is I can only see information from the transactions table. So a summary report and a detail report only gets data from a transaction table. I'll do an example of that in a second. The other piece is that we can't really mix accounts payable and accounts receivable data in summary reports. It's kind of an inherent problem that QuickBooks has when building custom summary reports. And the other thing is we can't really do custom calculations or custom subtotals. So let me talk about those limitations real quick. So let me switch over to QuickBooks and I'm going to escape here, and then I'm going to go to reports, and then I'm going to go to sales, and then I'll do a sales by customer summary report. So this is a basic summary report where in this case my columns, I can make them week, right? So these are my columns, the weeks, and then the rows are the customers, right? Now, there's a piece of information that I don't have here that I can see, such as my customer's address, right? My customer's address, if I go to customize report, I really don't have anywhere to add my customer's address. Now I can filter it. Yes, I can. So if I wanted to only show customers in Michigan, same example as I did before, this will narrow down and only show me Michigan customers. However, I can't group them or show that piece of information. Yes, I can filter it, but it's kind of, the filter happens behind the scenes and I really don't know what's being filtered. So this concept of grouping is very important when it comes to advanced reports. So a list report, which is going to be here in the list menu, and I can do a customer contact list. A list report will have information like an address, phone number, state, zip code. Actually, if I click on customize report, the columns are similar to how a transaction detail report is, where I can search something in here, a state, hit OK, and then I should have a column here for state, right? So this information is only in a list report. It's not in the transactions report. So whenever let me just make this a little bit smaller, hit cancel here, drag this here. So whenever I'm trying to sort of filter customers by the state that they're in, I really can't. So if I really wanted to pull that off, I would have to export this report into Excel, export that report into Excel, create a funky VLOOKUP formula to get that information to then be inserted there, and then maybe I can start doing that from there. And that's kind of a challenge, I think. But let's do an example of a pivot table just so we can get an idea for how pivots work, and we're going to actually do that in Excel. So I'm going to double click on this total here, $104,000. So double click on that. This is going to give me a detail report. And basically what I'm looking for is I want this type of report in an Excel spreadsheet. That way I can take information like the state, because in a detail report, I can pull the state. So let me pull the state here. So this information, I can pull out the state, there it is. And then in Excel, I could essentially do a pivot table and get this piece of information. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and click on Excel and create new worksheet. And now for the example of this exercise, I'm gonna have to do some Excel cleaning. I probably should have build this report just a little bit of a different way to make so I don't have to do so much cleaning, but for the time being, this should be fairly fast. So I actually don't mind cleaning up this data real quick. So I'm just gonna go ahead and all these excess data points that I don't need. So basically, this was a detailed report that contained a whole bunch of open invoices, right? And as we mentioned before, the data like the customer's uh, name, state, or the state was not available in a regular summary report. It was on a detailed report, but I was looking for a way to group them or summarize them. So now that I have clean information in Excel like this, and I'll just keep cleaning those excess blank fields that I don't need to avoid any confusion. Obviously, I should have cleaned this up in sort of in QuickBooks before going, but that's okay. So whenever I export raw data from Excel into QuickBooks, I have this concept of pivot table. So I'm going to go into data, and then I'm going to click on, not data, sorry, I'm going to click on insert, and then click on pivot table. And by the way, if you never dealt with pivot tables before and this is your first time, prepare to be wowed. If you've done pivot tables in the past, if you've done pivot tables in the past, maybe this is just a review to kind of understand the concept. So I'm going to hit OK. And then I can do things like pull my state information. Where's my state information? Pull that into my row label, and then going to, for example, my customer information, and then the amount, and bring that over here. And then basically through Excel, I can do really interesting things, get QuickBooks information to pivot. Now, I really hope that most of you who are watching have done pivot tables before, and this is not something new. So you say, okay, I get it. We can create pivot tables with QuickBooks data. So what does that mean for the advanced reporting world, which is the exact concept that I want to talk about here. So let me go into QuickBooks Advanced Reporting, and that's exactly what I wanted to discuss. So in order to get QuickBooks Advanced Reporting, which is the example that I'm going to show in the next 20 minutes or so, for the next 20 minutes or so, is you have to work in QuickBooks Enterprise. This is only going to work in QuickBooks Enterprise. You have to have an active subscription or an active service plan, and it has to be version 14 and above. I'm using 15 for this example, but they should be very, very similar. Now, QuickBooks Enterprise has to be in multi-user mode. Even if you only have one user purchase for that license, you still have to be in multi-user mode. And remember that QBAR, or QuickBooks Enterprise Advanced Reporting, creates a duplicate of the QuickBooks data to avoid slowing down QuickBooks, which is great because you can pull really complex reports without slowing down QuickBooks. But remember that you have to keep refreshing the data if people are creating transactions in real time. So every time you refresh the data, you'll be able to pull your custom report. If somebody's doing stuff today, your custom report that you're working on is not going to contain that information until you stop and refresh the data or recopy the data. Now, the interesting thing about QBAR is that you can do both a summary and a detailed report sort of at the same time, and that's kind of the example I'm going to create. And we're going to use a pivot chart. That's what they call it in QBAR, and just kind of think of that Excel pivot table that we made. Now, the only real big drawback about QuickBooks Advanced Reporting is that you can't double click on a transaction like in QuickBooks. That can take you straight into another report or to the transaction. I would say maybe that's one of the areas where people get most frustrated, is they want that to happen, but just kind of get accustomed to the idea that this is strictly a reporting tool. So I'm going to go ahead and create a report in QuickBooks Advanced Reporting, and I'm going to follow these steps that you see here. Okay, these steps are designed for me to have the best starting point for creating a custom report. So the first thing I do is I create a new report. I'll click on current selection, which is a little button that allows me to clear the screen and tell me everything that has been selected in terms of filters. In the QuickBooks Advanced Reporting world, think of list boxes as your filters, and I'll do an example of that. Whenever we got every single list box of filters that we want to use, then we're going to create the pivot chart, and then we're going to use this concept of dimensions to figure out what rows and columns we want to see, and then the expressions for the actual data being displayed or calculated. So let's go to QuickBooks Advanced Reporting to show you a few examples. So to run Advanced Reporting, we are going to make sure that we are on single user mode, on multi-user mode. Make sure you're not on single user mode. So we already are on multi-user mode here. I'm going to click on Reports and click on Advanced Reporting. Again, you have to be on QuickBooks Enterprise and you have to have an active subscription or full service plan for this function to work. I mean, the best thing is that this tool is completely free, but it is part of that subscription. So here it will ask me whether I want to update the data. So last time I went in there and updated the data. If there was any new transactions created from that time, I can click on update now, and that could take a few minutes, sometimes 20, 30 minutes if your data set is really, really big. I'm going to go ahead and hit skip this because I just recently uh, created an update a couple hours ago, so I don't need to do another one. So the first thing that will pop up is this reports list. This is used for you to see any of the custom reports that are pre-built by Intuit. So I'll just show you a couple. I'm going to click on AR Aging Summary, and this will basically show me something that looks extremely similar to a regular QuickBooks AR Aging Summary report. However, this is on the advanced reporting side. And then I'm going to click on report list again. And then we can see something like job estimates versus actual detail. And then I'll click won't save. And this is what the report looks like on this side. And there's sort of a combination between data and graphs. It's really, really interesting stuff. I love these custom reports, but I don't want to get too much into the reports that are already there. I want to just kind of show you how to create a report from scratch. So I'm going to go to reports, new. And the first step, according to my guide there, is we're going to click on current selection. Okay, that will blank out the screen and it will create this box over here that basically is going to keep track of every single filter that I'm using. Now, QBAR, QuickBooks Advanced Reporting, doesn't use the concept of filter, right? So it uses the concept of list boxes. Now they put filter next to it, so you kind of see how that works. Okay, so these are just some examples. By the way, you can pull almost any type of data point as a filter, but these are some examples here of the most common filters that we use. So we'll start with we'll double click on class, we'll double click on item type, and we'll double click here on their transaction type. That way we're going to have a whole bunch of filters here. So as we start creating reports, we're going to be able to choose, which filters we want to activate and deactivate and switch back and forth. Let's also do let's do P&L accounts, and we'll put them down here, and then we'll do balance sheet accounts as well. So this is great. So now we have, basically we have our chart of accounts. In here, in a nutshell, we have transaction types, we have item types, we have classes. We should also bring customer jobs as one of our filters, and we'll bring vendors as another one of our filters. So we basically activated almost every piece of information that we manage in QuickBooks: customer jobs, items, classes, transaction types, accounts, and we have them there as filters. Now I'm going to bring one more, which is my transactions table. So I'm going to click here where it says date and bring my transactions date table list. I'm going to double click on that. So now I have a transaction date range here at the top part. Okay, so I can say, well, I want 2018, 2017, maybe I want all the years combined. I mean, this is where I choose, what year range I want, what month. We can also bring in particular days. For now, we'll just leave that one there. Okay, so now we're pretty much, we started with our setup. I'm going to organize these a little bit better, and don't be afraid of kind of playing with these boxes and having them arranged in a way that it makes sense for you to navigate around it. So that was kind of the first step. If I want to, I can save this report, and I can call this, I'm going to call this template for new reports. That way, this is the exact sort of starting point I want to have. I can always pull it and customize it from here. This is a great place to start. Now in this big white space here, now think of this as a dashboard. I can have multiple pieces of information being shown here. But in this white spaces is where I'm going to create now my tables. Now I can pull the tables from here where it says tables, or I can create the charts. So I'm going to click here on charts. I can work with some of these charts that are already pre-created, or I can do my own chart from scratch. Now a pivot table is a chart, by the way. So we're going to right click and go to new sheet object, and then we're going to click on chart. Again, charts are not only graphical. In the QBAR world, charts are also pivot tables. Okay, so I'm going to click on chart. And again, I'm trying to build something like this. So what we did here in Excel, which is giving my sales by customer, by state, is what I'm going to build. Okay, now this is obviously going to take a lot more steps than what we did in Excel, but the nice thing about it is it's permanent. So I don't have to, keep cleaning up and deleting rows and stuff like that to be able to do that in Excel. Although I use Excel a lot for custom reports, it's quite nice. But remember, I'm trying to do the same thing I did in Excel in advanced reporting. So let's call this, we're going to call this invoices by state by customer. Okay, and then we're going to select this option here, which is the pivot chart. Okay, I'm going to do this option. And something I like to show you is kind of a quick trick. I like to put a checkbox here where it says pivot table and straight table. That just means I can quickly swap back and forth, and I can see the data organized in a different way. And trust me, it comes in handy. So I'm going to go next. And the next question is about dimensions. So dimensions are, let me go back into QuickBooks here and pull up, I believe that was like an AR type of report. So I'm going to go to sales by summary. So dimensions in this case would be like my rows and my columns, right? So in this case, my column is, let's say, for example, year. And then we'll do here dates all. So in this case, these columns would be one of my dimensions, and then this customer and jobs would be another one of my dimensions. But remember, the other piece of information we're trying to do, like we did in Excel, it's also pull the state, because we're trying to do sales by state. So just think about that state also being like a dimension. Okay, so now we're about to get into the real portion where people get a little bit intimidated, because we start seeing code-like type of information. But don't think of it as code. Think of it as fields inside of a database that we have to be able to access with ease. And QuickBooks had to give it a name that is unique, and it also makes sense to the user. So you're going to see a lot of these are sort of written in plain English, and they shouldn't be too difficult to manage. So I'm going to start by going into my transactions table, because we are pulling transaction data because we're pulling invoices. So I'm going to go into my transactions table. So I'm going to search in this list transactions. That gets me only transaction table. So everything you see there is part of my transaction table. So the first thing I want to do, and it's a great starting point for most people, is to start with transaction type. I find that starting with transaction type, it's one of the best starting points, because that way we start understanding what type of information we're looking at. So let me look for transaction type. There it is, transaction type. I'll bring that, I'll hit add. And then the next piece of information that I want to see is in this case, the customer. So I'm going to go up and go to transactions customer, and then I'm going to go pull my customer information. Where are you, customer full name? And then we'll click on add. And then the other dimension that we were going to work with, especially when we're comparing it with this report in QuickBooks, is going to be, in this case, our year. Our year could be our month or a year. So I'm going to change it from the transactions table, and then I'm going to go look at the transaction date calendar, which is the table that contains organized timeframes. And I'm going to go ahead and put year here, and then I'll click on add. So these are my three dimensions. Now in this case, year is going to be my column, and these two are going to be my rows, and I'm going to show you how we organize those in a second. Next thing I'll do, I'll hit next. Then I get this pop-up. If I close it, let me show you what this looks like. It's a pop-up for me to add an expression. I can't have a report without an expression. And the expression is basically the data that's being displayed. Is it going to be quantity? Am I going to see the item that is being sold? Am I going to see the dollar amount? Those are the type of things that we pull in expression. So in this particular case, we want dollar amount. So I'm going to go ahead and click on add. And then this is where this pop-up comes up and tells me, well, what type of data do you want to see? So one of the things that you want to look at is filtering it by tables, the same way we did it with dimensions. In this particular case, we can go into our transactions table again, and then inside our transactions table, we're going to have a field called amount with sign. Now you want amount with sign. Look for here. We got a couple of amounts here. See, we got amount in home currency. Now, when you do with multi-currency, that's going to be useful. But we want amount and amount with sign. With sign is most important because if it's a negative amount, you want that negative amount to show. So I'm going to do transaction amount with sign. I'll click on paste, and I'll basically paste that expression in there. That way I didn't have to know it or type it, and I'll put it in there. Now, before I hit OK and move forward, I have to do a little bit of coding here because I have to tell advanced reporting that I want this number to be added. So I want it to be summed. Okay, so I'm going to put sum, open parentheses, and close parentheses. So again, it was kind of similar to an Excel formula. I type summed, and then I open the parentheses and I close the parentheses. These brackets are just attached to that field. Okay, and that's very important. I don't have to do an equal sign, like I don't have to hit equals. I don't have to do that, but I do have to do the sum because what I wanted to do is to add all those amounts and as they're grouped together. So I'm going to click OK, and then under label I'll put here amount. That way I don't see this weird coding in here. So I'll put amount, and then I'll click on finish. So basically what I'm seeing in this table is, now we haven't told it that I only want to see sales, I only want to see certain customers. We haven't told it that yet. That's going to be the role of our filters, which is this information that's on the left side. We haven't done filters yet. All we did is say how we want the raw data to be shown. So let me close this left library here. Okay, and then also I'm going to open up invoices by clicking on that little tiny plus sign that's right there. We're going to click on that plus sign. You see that plus sign there? We're going to click on that, and that's going to expand that group of information. So that's going to expand my invoices by customers, and there's all my dollar amounts. Now, if I right click on the top of the table there and I go to properties, I can go into presentation, and then I can click here where it says always show fully expanded. And what this does, I'm going to click on that, right? So what this does is it doesn't require me to have to hit plus to open up all these boxes. It just opens them up all for me. That's kind of the concept of a pivot. Let me go back into Excel. For people that are accustomed to pivot, this is about expanding and collapsing them like this, right? So clicking on that button, always show expanded, means I don't have to click on any of these. Okay, I'm going to open that up. So there we go. So I have all my transactions, including deposit, sales orders. I have a whole bunch of things in there. And I'm going to go ahead and go to my filters here and say I only want to see invoices. I'm going to go into my transactions type table. I'll scroll down, and then I'll click on invoice. Okay. Now, when it comes to sales, sometimes I want to see maybe sales receipts as well. But let's say, for example, in this case, I'm only worried about invoices. Now, I got three dimensions here. I got transaction type, customer, and year. Okay. Now I said this could be columns or this could be rows. So this one that says year, I can click and drag until I see the arrow coming to the side, and basically it will create a table where it shows me years as the columns. Okay. So I still got the three dimensions there, but one of the dimensions is used as a column. So think of dimensions as rows mostly, but you can also use them in columns. Okay, so let me see. So I got my sales by invoice by customer. All right, so let me right click on the header of the table here and click on properties. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my dimensions, and I'm going to add some labels here so this information it's a lot cleaner, as I'm looking at the tables. So I'm going to change the labels here. So this one called transactions.txn type. I'm just going to call this type. And then this one called transactions customer's full name. I'll call it customer. And then this one that says year, that's actually just fine. So I'll click on apply, and then you're going to see that my labels in my table are a lot easier to understand. The other thing I want to do is I want to make sure that if the customer is missing or the transaction type is missing, that I suppress values where null. Basically, I'm saying, look, if there isn't a customer in that transaction for whatever reason, just ignore it. Okay, or if there isn't a transaction type, just ignore it. In this case, this report won't make much of a difference, but it's good to have that just in case. Okay, so I can start expanding some of these and collapsing them to make it easier for me to see. It starts becoming a little bit easier to digest. Now, you can tell here that we have customers and we have jobs. So let's explore a little bit deeper into how we can work with dimensions. So I'm going to right click here and click on properties, and then we see that we used transactions customers full name, but I'm going to go into a different table. I'm going to go into my list table for my customer, and I'm going to separate my job from my customer. That way I have them as two different dimensions. So I'll click on customer, and then I'm going to look for customer name. There we go. That's essentially going to be my job actually. So I'm going to click on add, and then I'm going to go down and look for parent full name, and that's going to be my customer's name. And then I'll click on add, and then I'm going to put the parent name in the top, and then I'm going to put in the label, I'll put customer, and then this one that says name on the label, I'll put job. So then I'll have customer, and then I'll have job. Okay, and then this one called transactions customer full name, I'm actually going to hide it. So instead of deleting it, I'm just going to hide it by clicking on enable conditional and put 0. I know this is silly, but this is how you have to do it. Okay, just bear with me. And then here that says year, I'm going to bring this all the way down so that can still be my column. That needs to be all the way at the end for it to be used as a column, and then I'll hit apply, and then we can see that our table changed significantly. In this case, QuickBooks Advanced Reporting really didn't know what to make column and what to make job, so we can grab customer and bring it back into the row and bring job back into the row. There we go. Okay, I just want the years as the columns, but you see how easy it is for us to move these pieces of information around and get different rows and different columns. Now let's talk about doing some subtotaling. So I'm going to right click and go to properties, and then for us to be able to do subtotaling, we're going to go into presentation, and then this says show partial sums. The concept of show partial sums basically means subtotaling. Yes, I wish that said subtotaling, right? But that's what it says, show partial sums, so deal with it. So we're going to go ahead and select it for all of them. So we're going to select it for all of them, all the way up to job, and then we'll click on apply. And then what's going to start happening is we're going to see a subtotal, in this case per customer per year. Okay, so we'll start getting some of these interesting subtotaling types of data. Now also I want to format these so these look more like real numbers, like monetary numbers. So I'm going to right click, go to properties, and then I'm going to click on number, and then here it says amount. I'm going to click on money. So I'll click on money, and then I click apply, and then I click OK, and there we go. Then we get monetary values. That makes a lot more sense. And what we're trying to do, so far this is something that we can do. So far this can be done in QuickBooks, right? So QuickBooks, we can go into, let's just kind of pull that. So we can go into reports, custom reports, summary reports. We can do here all dates, columns by customer. Again, I'm just trying to do the same thing on the QuickBooks side. And rows by, I believe it was year. That was year, wasn't it? Sorry, rows by would be customer and columns would be by year. Where are you, year? There we go. Under filters, this is the filters that we were using. One of them is going to be the transaction type, And in this case, we were going to see the transaction type was going to be invoice. Okay. And then under account, we don't want to see the expense side. We'll just see the income side. So we'll click on all ordinary income accounts, and then we hit. And this is what a report like this will look like. Compared to how it looks in advanced reporting, so I'm going to go ahead and click on advanced reporting here. And then I'm going to say, look, I only want to see transactions that have items. So I'm going to go ahead and select all my item types here. I didn't select any classes for the time being. And then I'm going to say I want 2016 and through 2019. That way I see sort of several years worth. And I'm also going to tell it I'm only want to see invoices. So I click on invoices there as well. And then you start seeing what the report starts looking like. And then I'll go into QuickBooks, and then we get very similar information. We would have to make sure that we have additional filters sort of set up. In this case, these could be showing sales tax information, and maybe these are not showing sales tax information or vice versa, but we're not going to get into details on why the data looks slightly different. But so this is already what QuickBooks Desktop can do, and then advanced reporting can do. We did it sort of similarly, and at this point, this is where you ask yourself, wait a second, why do I need advanced reporting if I was just able to do that with regular QuickBooks and it was 1,000 times easier? Well, here's the kicker. The kicker is here I cannot group these by state or any piece of information from for example, from my customer list. If I go to list and I go to customer contact list, then I'm going to click on customize report, and basically I'm going to go ahead and select every single column that's there and hit OK. So basically any of these information that I see here, that's part of my customer list, whether it's an address, a state, a zip code, a phone number, customer type, custom field, terms, reps, any of this information. Some of it I can filter where I can tell QuickBooks, hey, only show me the ones that have this, and the ones that don't have this, that sort of thing. But I can't group it. I can't subtotal it. This is where QuickBooks kind of stops and where advanced reporting begins. So let's talk about doing that particular example. So I'm going to go ahead and click on properties, right click on properties, and then under dimensions, I'm going to look for a new dimension, which is my customer's state. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the drop down there, and then go down to, should be my customers table. And then I'm going to go down into my customers. The billing state should be called or something. There you go. So billing state. And then I'll go ahead and click on add. And then I'll bring this down to be sort of at the very beginning. I'll also do country, like I'll do country and state, just in case. So we'll look for billing country, and then we'll grab that and push that up and put that right below billing state. So now we should have transaction type as the first one, the country, the state, the customer's name, or the parent name, and the year. So I'm going to click on apply, click OK. Now this does happen right when we start messing with dimensions. It starts reorganizing the columns. All you have to do is just bring this back in order here. I don't know why it does that, but it does. So here we go. Now we're going to see, we see all of our customers from California first, and there's my total for California, which in this case is 338. And then I can go down, look at Michigan, and then I can see my total for Michigan and so forth. This is the real great power of advanced reporting. We can even take it one step further and look for another dimension, which is customer type. So what is customer type? This is in the customer center. If I go to any of these customers and click on additional info, we have this concept of customer type, something also that I can't group and pivot in QuickBooks, but I can do it in advanced reporting. So I'm going to right click and hit properties, and then I'm also going to look inside of my customers table. I'm going to go ahead and look for customer type. Where are you? Customer type. There we go. Customer type full name. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring that up. I'm going to go ahead and bring that up and promote that all the way to the top. And then we'll make customer type our first. So we'll do customer type first, then the country, then the state. You know what? For the time being, let's go ahead and hide the transaction type, and let's hide the country. That way we're not looking at those. We'll make our table a little bit smaller and then hit apply. Okay, and then again, this does happen every once in a while. Whenever you introduce more dimensions, it doesn't know where to put them, so you just have to reorganize them. So check this out. Now, you see how these jobs are being shown. I can also hide the jobs and right-click Properties here, and then go into Presentation, and then go down to Job, and then unselect Always Show Fully Expanded, and then go to Customer and unselect that and hit Apply, and then you see things start getting collapsed, and I can actually manually expand the ones that I want to see. So it's kind of cool. I can start discovering the information as I go, instead of just seeing all the information at once. Okay, so actually that's all I wanted to show you on advanced reports. Hopefully that gave you really good insight into the power of it and what it can do. For more QuickBooks Advanced Reporting resources, go ahead and check out our webinars. They're going to be the third Wednesday of each month, starting April 20th. April 20th, May 18th, and June 16th. We're going to progressively get more advanced as we go. We're going to do more and more examples. If you want to join that webinar, make sure you go into our Facebook group and request access from there, and I'll send you a link so you can be part of that webinar. If you are part of the QB Power Hour webinars, you're going to get automatically invitation to that, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, a great website to go for resources is qbar.intuit.com. You're going to see more starter reports, step-by-step guides, more videos on QBAR. Again, join a Facebook group called Enterprise Expert, where we're going to cover only enterprise-related advanced topics like this. And if you get a chance to go to the Bahamas, there's a chance that we'll have a live class on QuickBooks Advanced Reporting on May 25th. Anyway, our upcoming episodes are next week, March 24th, 2016, Streamlining Your Workflow by Michelle Leung with guest speaker Citrix. The week after, so 2 weeks from now, Practice Management Tips. Joe Woodard will talk about building an epic practice, and Mark Wickersham, who's a pricing extraordinaire, will tell us some great tips on how to price our services. And then after, we'll have a break for tax season and resume back on May 21st with other QuickBooks Advanced topics. Anyway, thank you very much for attending QB Power Hour. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Join our LinkedIn group where Michelle Leung monitors. It's got 160,000 members, and also join the Facebook group for QB Power Hour. We have over 2,000 members sharing and asking questions about QuickBooks. Have a great day.